Welcome to the DevReady podcast. Joining me on the DevReady podcast today, I have Eric Neuman. Eric, thanks for joining me.
So nice to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. For those of you that are listening or new that don't know how I do this, I've never actually met Eric before, so I'll let him take away with his introduction and tell you who he is, because I can never do a good job of that just by reading his LinkedIn.
Yeah, so hey, I'm Eric Neuman. I'm the founder over at Dotted. I've been a product manager in big tech for the last 7 years. I started at Amazon, then I was at Microsoft. Most recently, I was at Axon. But before that, I was a startup founder right out of college. I started a company called Decision Desk, which brought performing arts auditions into the modern era with video and stuff like that. I did another startup in the VR space called Sprawly, where we did 360-degree interactive clickable tours that anybody could make. That one actually got acquired right out of private beta.
That's cool.
And now I'm in the process of converting my very deep lived pain of being a product manager in the Fortune 500 world into a suite of AI-powered tools that do product management and other kinds of strategic work in a modern and integrated way.
So have you always been in the product guy in those ventures when you first started?
That's a really good question. So no, I actually got a degree in computer science. I started coding when I was a kid, like when I was 11. I originally was thinking I was going to go out and do aerospace engineering, actually. And then I realized that if I got my dream job as an aerospace engineer, that I would hate my life. And that like maybe there was something to the fact that I was tutoring everybody in computer science without breaking a sweat. So I went out and I became a coder. I was a coder and a VP product at the same time and a CTO at my first startup. And then after my second startup got acquired, I got acquired into Digital Domain. And when I was there, I came in as a director of engineering. And I kept finding myself being like the technical person that the other techies shoved to the front of the room to go and talk to the teacher.
Yep.
And eventually I got the message that like, oh, this work, the work that I'm doing that allows me to unblock more people than anything else, that allows me to like multiply the velocity more than anything else is product management work. And so when I made the jump from Digital Domain over to Amazon, I made that official, and that's when I started living the PM life, as it were.
That's probably a quite an organization to begin the PM life at. I can imagine the amount of products that they have running across the business internally.
Yeah, it was very intense. And I joined directly into the Consumer Cloud Reliability Organization. So straight into working on Amazon.com, like an actual commercial site,
Okay.
and all of the thousands of little products where like every little icon and visual strip on a Amazon.com page is actually like a whole software team, a whole separate product.
Okay, so it's not one giant suite called the Amazon online experience. Effectively, it's every stream you can take on the website, I'm guessing, is considered a product in that regards then.
Literally every visual element on a page is a separate product.
Oh, well, okay, so it's a very like a microscopic way to look at it, which most people wouldn't be doing that way. And I imagine there's a lot of research that goes into how those things should be laid out in the consumer research side and the UI UX before it even gets to product and feature side, and then designing. Oh, you may be like, all right, we've got an idea, we've got a prototype, and then it goes out to the whole research group and get users involved and get them to figure out how many pixels and everything it needs to do.
I wish that's
Just assume Amazon will do that.
That's the way that you would think, but actually, so much of it is just about who has time to do what and who has resources to do what, and what the imperative is this quarter, and what resources can be negotiated to what time. And so Amazon is actually an incredibly organic organization. And as you say, like this is sort of where my learning in this space proper started. Like on my first day, I was given a mandate to try and help make the consumer site more reliable. And so I said, like, great, cool. Who can show me a map of how the software works? Like, is there an architecture diagram? And people just laughed at me. People just straight up laughed at me. And they're like, it is so vast and so complicated. Nobody has ever attempted to like document the whole thing. There's no test environment. There is only production. The individual little pieces of Amazon.com, they each have their own test environment, but there's no like test of the whole thing. And so like this was a part of my very early learning, is that like the actual job of managing product, of aligning engineering teams and resources, it's all human. It's all negotiation. It's all persuasion. And especially inside of Amazon, that persuasion has to come in the form of these very structured documents, right? Everybody's familiar, I think, at this point with like the PRFAQ and the famous Amazon one pager and two pager. You got to nail those things. And when you send them off on their own, like they have to be able to take on their own life and really go and do the work without you in the room.
That's really driven by those sort of documents as the process. So unless you get buy-in at that level, it doesn't go anywhere.
Yep, exactly.
That's interesting. You expect or you imagine more structure around like the deployment and the testing and the environments and everything, but I imagine there is. I probably use 1% of what Amazon actually does on the actual shopping site.
Yeah, and this is not to say that there aren't those things, but it's not like, at least in my experience, and I was there for a very short time. I experienced a very narrow slice. This may not be representative of everybody's experience, but from what I saw, each little team is sort of off doing its own thing. They're fighting for every ray of light and breath of air that they can get, just like in any major organization. And so sometimes there's an initiative that's like, okay, we're really going to laser line this on how the experience is going to go. But you have to realize that, like, the little box that calculates your tax before you click on the shipping page, like that's a piece of software. That's a team. The little icon that says this is Prime, that's just that little like lightning bolt icon or whatever. That's a piece of software. That's a team. So like, how do you organize an overarching UX flow or research flow or anything flow when you're talking about thousands of little pieces of software that are all working together? And then when I went to Microsoft, I saw a similar thing, except the scale is grander, right? Like inside of Teams, it's not quite to the point where like, every little icon is a totally different team. It's not quite like that. But you do have like, Teams is distinct from SharePoint, even though they're overlapped and intermingled and connected.
Yeah, it's a bit messy, but yeah, they've got more. Their platform is greater in like their product offering, where Amazon is probably treating like we would treat everything on the Amazon site as a feature of the Amazon product. That's how we would generally design it if you're looking at it as a product owner. These are the features we're adding to our online experience, where Microsoft has distinct products. Teams, SharePoint, Stream, Office. Office is broken up into 10 different products.
Right. And then, of course, the thing that's so fun about a giant company is that, like, I never got to work there, but the things that were happening over in AWS were completely different, with completely different rules. And I experienced the same thing when I was at Microsoft, is that, when you would be working inside of where I was, which was the mixed reality team, and you needed to communicate with somebody someplace else, even a near neighbor, like the Xbox team, the rules and the patterns and the way that the leaders over there like to be communicated with were all different. You would see the same overarching pattern, like, hey, there's an MBR, hey, there's a QBR, but the format is different. Hey, yes, you need to make a presentation to convince this person, but you have to use like their slide template and you have to follow this pattern. And if you don't fit the message directly into the way that they're ready to accept that knowledge, you're not going to get in the door. You're just going to sort of bounce off of them and hit their immune system.
Yeah. Did you find that frustrating then? Because there's so much variation where you imagine it should be standardized. As a product person, you're trying to standardize and provide an experience in the way to surface information and provide value. And it looks like you're butting up against that.
Yeah, so I'll say two things. So first of all, yes, I found it unbelievably frustrating, not so much because I would expect it just to be standardized, but also because it didn't feel meaningful. Like, the work that I was doing, right? Like figuring out how this bleeding edge science fiction stuff could be turned real, like we were doing with HoloLens and holoportation and mixed reality things, like that is the hard part, right? The hard part shouldn't be, hey, go communicate to this leader that you need like 2 more weeks to accomplish a thing, or that, you need 1 more person or whatever it is. That part should be easy. We've been doing that as humans for thousands and thousands of years. But that was actually the part that was much more challenging to me. So I did find it frustrating. I do want to say that, like, I think I've utilized my empathetic capabilities to try and understand this situation from the other side. And I do think that there's a reason for this. If you imagine that you're the leader at the top of a large organization, you have hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people all clamoring for your attention all the time. And essentially, it is your job to move that attention across and across and across so quickly from one thing to the next. You don't have time to stop and figure out what this format of this person's information is going to be every single time. You need to, as just like a factor of your reality, you have to say, like, if you're going to communicate to me, you like need to pre-digest the things into like this box because I can absorb, right? Like I can digest the thing that
You know what to expect then.
right, exactly. And so like it really is a problem on both sides that needs to be solved. And this is actually one of the things that's so exciting about what we're working on at Dotted is Dotted has functionality built right into it that addresses this exact kind of thing, right? Some other systems out there, you can hit a button and like generate a PRD or generate a slide. But the way that Dotted works is that you can take any old example of something like a PRD document or a status report or something like that. You just put it in and then you click on it and you can use it as a template with new information. So if somebody says, hey, you need to report to leader XYZ, and here's their meeting format, you literally just stick it in. You take your existing thing that you already have and you just mash it through it. And in moments, you get something that comes out the other side that's ready for whatever audience you need.
Yeah. So you're sort of solving there the communication problem across those silos then. So you're doing like a translation to the standardized template that each person's expecting in their format. So I can write it however I want. If I've got to talk to 10 different people, I can output it in 10 different versions.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is one of the things that we do. It's just one thing that fits into sort of like this grand arc of like, what is the, like I said, like, what is the stuff that is the hard stuff that shouldn't be in the life of a product person or a dev lead or somebody who's doing strategic work in a big organization? And so often it's, I have this idea, it's already documented. How do I reach this person? Or how do I predict what things that person is going to be concerned about in this idea and in this thing that I'm trying to produce? And we have some functionality around that as well. We let you build virtual stakeholders, we call them. They're essentially sub agents to our main agent. And you can create them from looking at somebody's comments in a document or dropping in a chat from Teams or Slack or whatever and saying, go build this, or just saying, hey, I have a person who's this kind of an expert or a customer that looks like this, or go look up this person on the web, whatever. We take all sorts of inputs. We build this super sophisticated stakeholder, and then you can use that stakeholder. You can talk to them directly in chat, but you can also feed in a document and say, go give me feedback. Like, hey, I'm going to meet with this leader, or I need to get past this InfoSec hurdle. Like, let's make a stakeholder for each one of them and then have them put comments on my document. Before I get comments from the real one, I get the virtual person's comments. And then you can just grind on it with AI.
So it just helps you to then accelerate through that faster to get that buy-in effectively.
Right. Yeah. And this is based directly from learning that I have from watching people who are much better PMs than I am. And like what makes them so talented, what makes them so good is that they can predict what their stakeholders will have problems with. They can predict how to get things, approved essentially.
Yeah, they know how to play the game almost.
The better they are at emulating their stakeholders in their own mind, the more easily they can align all of those, needle eyes and thread straight through all of them. And so basically we've built a tool which like does for that work what a calculator does for math.
It's an interesting approach. So just in the 30 seconds we spoke before we started the podcast, we mentioned that, like you built something similar, but I call our platform, the DevReady AI, a product design platform, but it's completely different to what you've specified. Ours is more around the design and architecture of features and requirements and deliverables, not the outer level communication that you're sort of covering. It's because that's what you've been experiencing. So just background for you, I started this business when I was 22 in 2008. So I've been doing this for 17 and a half years, and we've just been building software, and I've grown from being the developer and all the way up to now leading the people that lead the developers, and product architecture is where my focus is, and CTO side. So it's more the top level vision and stuff. So that's where I've solved on our version of what we call product design is designing the actual features, functionalities, requirements, and acceptance criteria for a feature, for a system. So I'm solving our workflow that we're noticing. So there's not too much overlap, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I only quickly glanced at at your tool, but like I think there's no shortage of pain here,
Of course not.
One of my key learnings in being a product manager, and I do want to stress the thing that we're doing, like we started with product management as our entry point because it was my pain to solve, and I still really think that it's going to be a huge problem. But we've discovered that these same things that I was feeling as a PM, a lot of other kinds of workers feel them too. Um, but that said, one of the key learnings that I had is from being a PM is the reason why there's no good tools for PMs is that leadership sees PMs as the tool.
That's the tool to them at their level.
Right? Like the PM is the tool where it's like, I have something that I want to make real in reality. I'll tell it to you. You make a plan. You bring the plan back to me. I'll give you a thumbs up. Then you'll go make the plan happen. And you'll reach into the engineering planning tool and make sure that the engineers know what to do, and into the designing tool and make sure that the designers know what they're trying to do, and then get the execution going. And then I certainly, as the leader, won't go and look at Jira or look at Figma, but I will ask you what is happening and you will tell me. So the PM is the interface layer, is the reporting tool, is the execution tool, is the tool for leadership to reach down into those other systems. And like, frankly, with the pace of modern development, I don't think we can continue this way. There's this great soundbite that came out of Google that they are used to having a ratio that's, I think it's 1 to 7 PMs to devs, and that they're looking forward into 2026 that it's actually going to be half a PM to each dev.
Okay. That's a huge difference.
Because AI has accelerated up coding execution so much, right? And the problem is that strategic work is still just being done in PowerPoint and Excel and spreadsheets.
And then you've got those rapid prototyping tools now where a PM can it's easier to prototype your product and document it and explain everything. If you can show the developer what you're actually trying to build and then they can finish it and polish it, that's going to get you a lot faster. That's probably why it's that 1/2 to 1. Because now the PM spending time actually putting a visual together to sell the concept. Because you read things, people are going to interpret them differently.
So you're not wrong that there is some line blurring that's happening right now, right? There is definitely PMs who are becoming more like coders, and coders who are becoming more like PMs, and designers that are becoming more like both. And the defining variable here in who I think is going to be successful is who figures out what to do next fastest, is best able to communicate and convince and align that that is the right thing. And so I think you're dead on that these new prototyping tools allow you to communicate, or maybe even to figure it out, because you can build it and try it and build it and try it. But the alignment problem is still there. And the communication problem is to some extent still there, right? Like if you come up with this great idea, but then you still have to make a PowerPoint presentation and take it 6 levels up your hierarchy, right? Like by the time you get to the monthly review where you get to convince the person to maybe let you talk to the person who can possibly think about giving you the budget, like 3 startup companies have popped into existence, solved the problem, and made $10 million, right?
It's going to be a challenge to then change the organization at that level and the culture. Because if you're going that PR fact that like Amazon writes, it's so well known and that's ingrained in what they do. But will that evolve into, you show me a PR visual now, give me a product demo effectively without that, and show me how it's supposed to work? Like, I'm not sure how long it'll take for Amazon to probably change that model, if they even change at all, because that still may not serve the purpose of, you've got that limited amount of attention, and how do you then distribute your attention without having to then spend an hour playing with the prototype?
Exactly. And so I think that you're hitting on sort of something that we're really passionate about at Dotted, which is just that like the future belongs to whoever can ideate, conceptualize, and align faster, right? Execution is freer and freer by the minute, but the process of deciding what to do is like, it's just going to become the bottleneck. And we are right now in the process of growing our product from sort of that inner loop to also covering the outer loop. Sorry, I should probably explain this. So in the world of development, you probably know this, But in the world of development, there's like this concept of inner loop and outer loop, right? And software developers spend their whole inner loop in an IDE, in like Visual Studio or something like that, some tool that they're using to do their coding. And then they have an outer loop where they take that code and they go and merge it into the larger code base, and they get feedback from a system that says, oh, you didn't pass this test, or, you're going to have to merge in with this person and get approval. And the whole thing flows together in such a way that tens of thousands of people can work on a single shared thing under what's called continuous integration, right? And it's wild, but the dev world got there like 30 years ago, maybe 20 conservatively. The dev world has gotten to this place where they're able to simultaneously work on the same stuff, and consensus can evolve, and you still have leadered organizations, and there's still a hierarchy, but just like momentum is not impeded by a lack of decisions. You can just flow. But we over in strategy land, we don't have that. So the question is, what does it take to build a tool that can bring that kind of continuous integration to the strategy and decision-making process of a regular organization, a medium-sized organization, and a massive organization? And we're like just scratching the surface on that. But it turns out that once you've figured out what makes that inner loop work, plugging those things together, really almost any way you do it, plugging those things together in a way that maps the organizational hierarchy is a really good start.
Yeah, because everyone's going to have similar issues. Like you said, you've experienced things across different roles at the organizations, and then it's just those issues then just repeat themselves for the next level up the tree with their peer, and then that peer's peer, and just keep repeating.
Yeah. So if it's okay, can I like tell you my one of the things that I'm most passionate about that got us to start this? So I hate reporting. I hate it. I think it's just like miserable. I like to do, I like to create, I like to make things. I like to change the world and make it better, especially for my customer. That customer obsession really stuck to me from Amazon and before. But reporting is like this necessary evil that you have to do inside of any company, because the people at the top need to know what's going on. The people in the middle need to know what's going on. Everybody has to do it. And so here's the pattern that I'm familiar with from Amazon, Microsoft, Axon, is that like as a PM or a dev lead or whatever, really anybody in a strategic role, you probably own a slide that you have to update once a week, maybe once a sprint. And it looks like this. Tell me if this sounds right to you. So it's a slide, and it's got on one side, it's got a summary of what happened this week. On the other side, it's got a little table, and the table says, here are my milestones. Here are the dates. Here's the red, green, yellow. Is it on track? Is it off track? Is it at risk? Right? And then here's a little like yellow section that's like, if we need something from leadership, here's what we're asking for.
Yeah, pretty standard.
Yeah. Okay. So basically everybody has to do this. And if you're doing this once a week, you have to do like a 2-day work back, because you're representing the work of an engineering team. So you have to circle up with the engineering lead. You're representing the work of some designers. So you have to circle up with the designers. You're representing QA, maybe legal, maybe hardware, whoever it is you're representing, you have to get their input. So you go and you write something, you circle up with them, you pull in an hour of time from each one of these people. These are the leaders on your team, right? So every week you're pulling in 5-6 hours total of your most expensive people. And if you're like a person like me, you probably own 4 or 5 slides like this. And a lot of the people who you're bringing in are overlapped across multiple of those slides. So we did the math. It's roughly 1 to 2 days a week spent on reporting for anybody who's a leader in a strategic organization, in a strategic role in a Fortune 500 company. 1 to 2 days a week. And then here's the part that's the worst. This is the part that makes me just nuts. Once a month, you take that same information and you package it up into an MBR, right? And then once a quarter, you take that same information and you pack it up into a QBR. At each level, the pressure is higher. There's more people involved. The leader is a higher level. You have to spend more time, laser lining those words. And then tell me if this sounds familiar. You only talk about the red.
Pretty much. That's what at the high level, they only care about the problems or what the blockers are. Or
Right. So 90% of this work, nobody even ever sees it. Nobody even ever looks at it. So long story short, we've built a system that automates 90% of this work away while keeping the people who are necessary, the people who have to put in their input and be able to manage that narrative upwards. It stays intact. And I think that this is really important because I want to move away from, I'm not trying to hard pitch you guys. The reason why we're doing this is because we see that AI is this game-changing technology and it's failing to connect in the ways that it needs to. And so the question is why, right? And I'll stop. Why do you think? Why do you think AI is blowing it everywhere in terms of these pilots?
I think there's two ways to look at it. There's the expectation of what AI can do is wrong. If you're not familiar with all the news and everything that's happening, everyone just expects AI to be able to do everything. So either the expectation is wrong at the leadership level on what AI can do. So they're throwing budgets at these things. These pilots are failing because they're expecting it to do A, but it can only do half or whatever it may be. Everyone's selling agents at the moment. Most agents are just a repeatable process. Don't need to be an agent. You're just wasting time and tokens on having the agent figure out how to do the same step every single time. That's why I think number one is. The second one is there's people who are playing with the tools who sort of feel empowered to be able to do things now. And then they're the ones that are trying to lead these initiatives forward, but they don't know enough about the technology or when to use it. So they're delivering the wrong thing. So they're setting the wrong, again, they're setting probably the wrong baseline, what people should be expecting. It's from both ends. Because if you come to someone like yourself or myself, I'll tell the client exactly, this is what's possible, this is what's not, this is what we can do, this is what you can just automate in an automation platform. You don't even need AI. Or get rid of Excel and use a system to begin with before you even go to AI. So I think it's just how they're being pitched and then they're framing the benefit to the business.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that we are in the end curve of a hype cycle? Do you think that people are about to realize that some of the things they thought AI was going to be able to do, it's not, and will actually be able to level out and start talking more about the things that this kind of AI is really good for?
So I haven't given this much thought before, but I keep hearing people saying we're peak AI or at the end of the cycle. But I think thinking about now after what I've just said, there's probably multiple cycles running at once. So in saying that, is the chat cycle is done. Everyone has a chatbot. That cycle, chatbots are the ultimate way to use AI. And that was done a year ago, maybe. Now we've got the agentic hype cycle coming in. That one is being oversold a lot, I think. And even, I think just today, OpenAI had the developer day and they released their agent SDK. So the big frontier models still haven't released all the tools to allow people to build these agents the right way. Everyone still thinks an agent is NAN and things like that. Agents are very difficult to build and to get right, and they're being used for the wrong things. They're being used for the wrong things. So I think we're over the hype cycle on the chatbot or the chat interface. The agent cycle's coming, and then we're starting to look at, all right, Google's releasing agent payments. So this is building, and we're getting close to that peak. But then we've also got the multimodal hype cycle coming. Video and audio are coming up. And you've got these, now we can do video. So there's multiple things competing. And I think that's where the blurriness is coming into everyone.
Why do you think we keep seeing this same pattern where these big companies keep building agent building frameworks? To me, I find this so strange. Imagine if in the early aughts, when the Web 2.0 thing really hit, imagine if instead of apps getting to be big, app building frameworks were being handed out to regular consumers, here, go make your own application, please. Right? Doesn't that seem like a mismatch?
I think it is a mismatch, but it's a lot of it now is because you can. So if you can build it, you build it because it's so cheap to build. It's a little bit of a different equation than the dot-com bubble or the previous, the app boom when there was 1,000 fart apps on the App Store.
The entry friction is so low.
Yeah, when the App Store first launched in, 2009 or 8, around when we started the business. The iPhone 2, then the iPhone 3 got 3G, then it turned into app stores because it was, if you remember, it was launched as web apps only. initially. There was no app store. So to build an app, there wasn't many people that knew Objective-C to build apps. It was super expensive. And it's been super expensive up until, realistically, the start of this year. In the past 8 months, the cost of development has been so cheap, people can just build an app and throw it away. So we've gone from super expensive apps to the $199 app, which really like changed the way people thought about apps, going from the $150 a year subscription or buying the product and keeping the CDs to I can just build it myself. I can go on Lovable and I'll build an entire ERP enterprise platform. And then someone goes and looks at that code and there's just months and months of gibberish behind it.
Right, exactly. I mean, and this is something to some extent that we're responding to as well, where people actually kind of keep asking us to be a vibe coding app. And we're kind of like, we don't really want to do that. There are people who are good at coding, and they're going to keep being better at coding than an AI on its own for a while. And the data really bears this out, right? You can see that what's happening is that senior developers, people who already really know how to code with the power of AI, are increasingly equivalent to a small team rather than an individual. But junior developers are not leveling up in the same way, right? What we're seeing is that they have basically the classic vibe coding problem is like you go and you start building something and you get a little bit into it and then you fail. Because like what it takes to be a good vibe coder is actually, ironically, it's actually almost a little bit more like being a PM. You have to be able to give really clear instructions. You have to have a good sense of what is possible and what is not possible. And you sort of have to have a code smell. Do you know that term?
You can figure out if it's good or bad code.
Yeah, you have to have a nose for like, yeah, that works, but I don't like it, right? And you don't have that sense if you're just getting started. And so what happens is you paint yourself to corners really, really quickly. And for that reason, we're steering away from that. We have a generative capability where you can make what we call a prototype, and it's an all-in-one clickable HTML page or whatever. But it's not. The intent is not that it's going to go off and it's going to become your application. The intent is that it's something you can use to convince. You can say, "Hey, designer, I think maybe this is a good starting point for you," or like, "Hey, coder, designer's off on vacation this week. We used AI to get a design. Please go build this." Or
it's a context piece. It helps provide more context. It's all about, Aerion says, context engineering and context with AI models. But anytime you talk to a person, if you don't give them the right context, they're not going to understand what you're talking about, or they'll misinterpret what you're saying. And that's especially critical as a product manager.
Yeah. And I mean, also there's like an aspect of being in the workplace where you're really fighting for attention and fighting for airtime. And if in 2025 or, we're almost at 2026, if you show up to a meeting and you have a dry old-fashioned doc and your designer has something that Figma, generated for them that's a clickable interactive, and some other PM went straight to cursor and made something or used Lovable, like you're not going to get the same airtime. You don't have as rich of a piece of content. But that doesn't mean I think everybody wants to go and become a coder.
No, and what everyone thinks a coder is definitely changing. Like we've been working with vibe coders for the last 3-4 months, and we've got some people that have been building several hours a month for 5 months, building platforms. And when we get the code, all right, like I'm ready, let's go and try and commercialize this. Okay, let's take a look and get you ready and secure to be commercialized and get you production ready. There is 4 different ways it's accessing data in the database. There's no standardized ORM layer or data entity layer, however you want to term it. There's 3 different ways it's querying APIs, and there's hard-coded things and non-hard-coded things, and then there's no central management of things. Like it can write code, and it can write code like probably a very junior person. But again, unless you've got that background to give you enough context to understand what is good, what is bad, how to make things function, how to the dry don't repeat yourself method, turn things into classes, turn things into functions, make things reusable, add these design principles into the code, which the AI knows about because it's all available on the internet, but doesn't follow them repeatedly, or it doesn't understand your complete vision because you're not giving it enough context like a PM would to the developers and say, here's everything I need to build, but here's the first thing we want to build.
Yeah. And I mean, I think we can connect this back to what we talked about before with GitHub, right? Like, I think we are quickly going to see that the kinds of automated filters that get added onto GitHub or other Git repos before code can be committed will be things that check for this, that say, oh, you violate, like you rewrote the same function 40 times. No, you can't get in. And of course, in order to actually determine that, you'll have to scan the code with AI, because traditional filtering wouldn't be able to find that. It would just say, yes, this compiles, yes, this meets the standard. But with AI, you can go and look at that sort of stuff. And so I do think that we're going to get through it, right? And then this just puts us back in this place where, like, if execution really gets to this point where it can move at the speed of, here's a prompt, out comes a working thing. And if it doesn't pass the test, AI revises it. The question is really just like, how do you figure out what to build, get that funding, get that thumbs up, and keep going? Like, instead of doing that once a year or once a quarter or once a month, how do you do that 5 times a day, right? What does that future look like?
The version of what we tell people at the moment is, before the rise of the AI coding, it was most people go for maybe the cheapest quote and they jump into development too fast. So all they've done is they've built the wrong solution. Then they take that from that team and go, all right, these guys didn't build what I told them. This is what I wanted to do. Here's the code. The next team builds it and they've built the wrong thing again. AI is just, at the moment, unless you know how to design a product and a system, you're doing that process much faster. So the AI is just helping you build the wrong thing faster. And then you're iterating and iterating, trying to bring it back to where you want it. And then it goes to wreck something else and pulls you away.
I literally wrote that exact sentence in one of our one pagers that we handed off to a VC. Exactly that sentence. That if you have AI execution, if you have AI speed execution, but not AI speed planning, you will only build the wrong thing faster.
And that's what we have with the DevReady. Yeah? We get people, the whole process is a physical process. We get people development ready. Plan the product, know exactly what you're trying to build, be as agile as you want. But once you start building, people will go, all right, now you go into that fixed waterfall. You know what you're building. Don't deviate, because then you're going 100 different directions because you've already done your planning up front. The issue is the AI is a faster hammer, effectively. It's just a tool.
Right. Well, is it a tool? But it's kind of a hammer that can hammer itself increasingly, right?
Yeah, it's probably like a screwdriver hammering instead of a hammer at times. Depends how you want to take it. It can improve itself. Like Claude and Codex on their CLI tools, they say that majority of code is being written by their own tools. And I believe that, but they've got some of the very best engineers sitting behind it, doing the PRs and checking and refining everything. And we don't know how they're prompting and what their PM process looks like. And that's what most people don't see.
Well, and also, who's asking the question, right? Who's saying, Claude Code, can you please go and do this, this, or this, right? Like that part is just, it's going to become so much more important. I actually think this is a little bit funky, but like there's a little bit of a metaphor here, almost to like fashion or something like that. If you look at clothes from way back when we could only make things that were like, brown rags,
Yep.
Everybody wore brown rags.
It's utilitarian, yep.
Yeah. And then as we started to get like, oh, well, we had more and more dyes and more machines, and in the Industrial Revolution, and then like the 70s and the 80s with new materials, suddenly you could make anything. And look at the way that people dressed in the 70s and the 80s. Mm-hmm. And then it took a while for us to restabilize and be like, well, maybe we shouldn't wear all of the colors at once,
Yep.
And I think that maybe we're going to see something like that in this era as well, where companies and product teams go out and they just become feature factories, and they just crank out every single possible idea. And you're going to maybe see that a certain, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but a certain Appliness might become more appealing to people, where like very focused, very clean things, are going to rise to the top.
But I think it's still going to come down to, the end of the day, there has to be a solid business behind it. Doesn't matter how many features you can crank out. Unless there's a business there, why would you even bother going for it? Unless you're just looking something to pass the time and you've already made your money. Like, the reason everyone's doing this is to either add value to the business and grow it, or start a new one. And the VCs aren't going to throw money at people that are throwing 1,000 things at the dartboard, because then there's no focus.
Right. I mean, it all comes back to the same couple of fundamental values that any good thing that people will pay for comes to. Like, does this give me some experience that I like? Does this connect me with other people in a way that I couldn't without it? Does this give me time to do the things that I love with the people that I love more? Those are the things that rise to the top over and over and over again. And that doesn't change. People don't change. What we care about at that level is innate.
Yeah. If you can help someone either save time or save money, they're the two biggest things, and then help them if they know where to spend their time, even better.
Mm-hmm. Even better if you help them make money is what I found.
Yeah. If you can do both at the same time, even better.
Ooh, then you really got something.
Yep. Well, Eric, it's been a pleasure having you on, and this has been an interesting discussion. I didn't know where we were going to go when we started, but it's been a good sort of second half on the AI and the direction and stuff. So thanks for your time today. If anyone wants to reach out and find out more about you and Dotted, how can they do that?
They can check us out at trydotted.com, and they can reach me at eric@trydotted.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Catch you later.